The R Sports Transfer Show to give you the latest breakdown every single weekday about what's going on in the world of football transfer during the January transfer window. My name is Dylan and I'm going to tell you today that the first piece of breaking news that's come out today on Thursday, the 8th of January, is that Antoine Semenyo to Man City is finally going down. So obviously that was a deal that was initially thought of as a deal that was going to go through weeks ago, before the transfer window even opened. But since then, Bournemouth have played 2 or 3 games this year, and he's still been with the Bournemouth squad. And last night, he scored a 95th minute winner against Tottenham. And David Ornstein has come out today to confirm that Antoine Semenyo is set to complete his long-awaited move from Bournemouth to Manchester City after they finalised an agreement that does not, this is the interesting bit, that does not require his release clause to be activated. So what it is Man City will commit £62.5 million guaranteed to Bournemouth, with an extra £1.5 million in bonuses or add-ons, depending on what you like to call them, with Bournemouth then entitled to 10% of future profit of any sale that occurs. So what this means is that Bournemouth get a higher fee up front, Man City get to pay the fee over 24 months rather than all up front, and then they also skip a load of other payments that may be due to go to other clubs. Because as well, remember, Bristol City get a large chunk of this fee. Not a majority of the fee, but a large chunk of the fee due to a sell-on clause they agreed with Bournemouth. Semenyo is due to undergo his medical today on Thursday ahead of signing his contract and will be a Manchester City player by the weekend, provided that all the registration goes through, and may even make his debut in the FA Cup. But elsewhere, there's also been a fair amount of news on Arsenal's contracts. So Charlie Watts, who is very well regarded for his knowledge about the inside world of Arsenal, says that Arsenal are trying to tie down a number of key players, even if their contracts don't expire for 18 or 24 or 36 months. So according to him, Arsenal are known for tying key players down with new deals, even with 2 or 3 years left on their current contracts. And one of those is Jurrien Timber. So his form, Jurrien Timber, the right back, has been brilliant this season. The Netherlands international has been one of Arteta's key players, having come back from injury, obviously initially suffering an injury when he first signed for Arsenal a few seasons ago. Apparently, his talks over a new deal have been very positive, despite the fact that his contract does not expire until 2028. But could be a complication with Martin Ødegaard's contract. So the Arsenal captain, this is according to Charlie Watts again, the Arsenal captain has not yet entered into talks over a new deal. Ødegaard's contract also doesn't expire until 2028. But according to Charlie Watts, he is not Andrea Bertra, the sporting director's current priority. Apparently, Berta is looking to tie down Saka and Declan Rice, 2 new contracts before he then enters into negotiations with Odeegard. Obviously, the fact that Arsenal are approaching this so early on means that likely new contracts will go through. Obviously, Ødegaard is Mikel Arteta's captain, and he's back to his very best this season after, finding form with Victor Gyökeres up front ahead of him, playing alongside him, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, all of these guys, all the attackers around him playing good football helps Ødegaard. He's back from injury and back to his best football. He won Arsenal Player of the Year 2 years in a row prior to last season. But Charlie Watts does want to stress that with Saka and Rice being the current priorities, and obviously Ødegaard being captain, there are going to be other talks that are going to be needed about guarantees of keeping the armband and possibly extra incentives being the captain. There could be a couple complications, but that is definitely one to keep an eye on as the time goes on. And sticking with Arsenal, we're going to talk about Ethan Nwaneri, because Bournemouth are losing Semenyo, and at the same time, they've just lost Justin Kluivert to injury. And according to The Independent, Bournemouth are interested in a loan move for Nwaneri, but the 18-year-old's preference is to stay at the Emirates, stay with the Gunners until at least the end of the season, even though he is struggling for first-team football at the moment. But I would say, keep an eye on this one, because as I said, they lost Semenyo to City with that deal expected to go through today or tomorrow, and they confirmed that Justin Kluivert is going to undergo surgery on his left knee after their loss against Arsenal, the 3-2 loss. Obviously, that was before the Spurs game. So he will be out for a while, and Bournemouth are going to therefore be looking for reinforcements. And they see Ethan Nwaneri as one of those players who could bring, they've got their first win in 12, obviously hilariously, against Tottenham, 95th minute winner from Semenyo, and they're looking to get on with good form again, but they need attackers up front, and they see the Arsenal young star as one of those. And moving up back to London, Oliver Glasner has been speaking once more on Marc Guehi. So Crystal Palace recently drew 0-0, 0-0 with Aston Villa. After normally Aston Villa is a team that Crystal Palace like to beat. A 19-4 aggregate score over the last few seasons between Glasner and Aston Villa. But it was a 0-0 draw on Wednesday evening. And speaking to Sky Sports, Glasner offered more on Marc Guehi's situation. So as everyone knows, Marc Guehi was meant to be joining Liverpool in the summer, but Palace backed out of the deal last minute, and the England international, their club captain, stayed at Crystal Palace. Man City have now registered interest this summer, but will reportedly, according to Ben Jacobs, not go any higher than the £35 million agreed with Liverpool, that Palace agreed with Liverpool in the summer. So, interesting situation there, but we know how Man City need their centre-backs. Gvardiol's out, Diaz is out. They need their defensive reinforcements. As we saw, another draw against Brighton yesterday. City are losing points week on week on week due to poor defensive errors, and so they need reinforcements. What Glasner has said is he says, I think Marc will stay. But if Marc says, I want to leave, and the club, and any club, could be Man City, pays massive money with 5 months left on his contract, every player will leave if you're playing for a club like Crystal Palace. I'm pretty sure our chairman, that Steve Parish, will ask for a very high price for him, and then let's see. I don't know if Marc wants to leave. So what's interesting about this is that Marc Guehi hasn't actually told... So in the summer, he told Crystal Palace, I want to go to Liverpool. But this time round, he's not actually said anything to Crystal Palace about leaving or not. And what that might be because they're on a European one. They're trying to win the Conference League, their second trophy in 2 seasons, which will be, the first time ever that the club's won a trophy, that club's won a trophy and then gone back to back and won a European trophy and try and get into the Europa League through Conference League qualification. So Marc Guehi might decide to stay. He might want to stay because he can A, try and lift the European trophy with Crystal Palace, and B, if he's a free agent in the summer, he will have many more options. I'm sure Real Madrid will be looking. Manchester United might be looking. They're looking for centre-backs. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, all the big teams will be over him. So maybe Marc Guehi could not tell Palace he wants to leave and then go in the summer. And sticking with Glasner, there's obviously a whole situation about his contract as well. His contract is up in the summer, with many clubs looking for new managers possibly in the summer, after the season ends, with Manchester United being one club routinely linked to Glasner since Ruben Amorim's sacking. And what Glasner said the other day is that he will intensify talks about a new deal with Crystal Palace in the next weeks before he makes a final decision. So what Glasner was saying the other day is that the last few weeks at Crystal Palace, the last month or so, the Christmas period, has been so hectic with Carabao Cup games, European games, Premier League games, that they've just had no time to sit down and actually talk. But what Glasner confirmed the other day to Crystal Palace fans and the rest of the football world is that they will be sitting down and having genuine talks in the next few weeks to find out, A, is he going to sign a new deal, or they might very quickly decide if he's not going to sign a new deal. And that is best for all parties involved. That allows Glasner to finish out the rest of the season knowing what his future is going to look like. That helps Crystal Palace prepare for the future, i.e. with Glasner or without Glasner having to find a new manager. And also allows the players to make decisions, because if Glasner stays, then maybe some players may choose not to leave. But if Glasner was to go, players like Mateta, etc., who may be looking for, one final big move in their career as they hit their late 20s, it'll allow them and Crystal Palace and everyone involved to become a lot calmer and be able to figure out the future from the summer onwards, with or without Glasner. And there's also plenty of other news coming out about managers in the Manchester United situation. So United are looking for a caretaker manager, and according to The Guardian, Michael Carrick has edged closer to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in a bid to become interim, although Solskjaer remains the slight favourite. However, the Daily Mail have also claimed that Michael Carrick, should he not get the job as interim manager, would be prepared to rejoin the club as Solskjaer's assistant for the remainder of the season if he's unsuccessful in ultimately getting the interim head coach role. Darren Fletcher is set to take charge of the FA Cup game against Brighton this weekend. Obviously, United drew to Burnley on 2-2 on Wednesday night, but they'll be facing Brighton at Old Trafford in the FA Cup on the weekend. And Darren Fletcher is still yet to remain charged of that game, regardless if a decision is made or not before that game. But that is the latest transfer news here on DR Sports about all the goings on in the January transfer window. Make sure to join me every single weekday morning on DR Sports for all your latest news. I'll see you soon.